Hey, good morning, everyone. So what am I working on today? Well, I got an '02 Chevy S10 pickup truck. Had a rod knock, so we're pulling the motor on it. Customer actually didn't want to fix it, so Mo bought the truck from them. And we had a 2000 Blazer that was wrecked with a reman motor in it. It ran great, just a wreck. So there's a slight difference between a 2000 and a 2002. You can interchange them, but there is a slight difference. But let me show you what I got. So here you can see we already got the motor out, and amazingly enough, this truck has been parked for 2 years now. Somebody had put a transmission in this thing, and the guy even said the transmission was just done on it. So, but whatever. So we got the motor out. They're tight. These things are, with four-wheel drive, these things are really tight because the oil pan fits right down in between the front diff and the tranny. You got to push the tranny back a little bit, but it's just a. These things are just so tight. It's just I really don't like doing these just because of how tight they are. But anyway. So here's the motor that came out. We already stripped the heads off because it's just easier, excuse me, it's easier for us to just get them disassembled as much as possible because we stuff them in old cars that are going to get crushed. And as you can see, it doesn't look terrible. It looked like it was maintained somewhat. Who knows what happened, but it spun a bearing. So anyway, what I wanted to show you, one obvious difference, that's where the knock sensor goes. And I'm showing you that for a reason. If you come over here, this is that motor that was a reman. And it's a little greasy, but if you look close, you'll see it's pretty clean on the inside there. We just cleaned off the intake gaskets. We have to switch the intake gaskets and this left side manifold. The left side exhaust manifold is different too, because this one does not have EGR. What I'm trying to say is this manifold itself came off the truck. This engine has EGR, whereas that one doesn't. So we got to change over I said intake gaskets, I meant the whole intake, because the intake that came on this motor has EGR. Now, one other thing I wanted to show you is, here is the knock sensor. The knock sensor on the 2000 is this design, whereas the knock sensor on the 2002 is this design. Now, here's the problem. Obviously, it doesn't fit. So what do? Well, I've got a couple of different things to do, and let me show you real quick. What I've done in the past is I've gotten brass plugs like this. This is a steel plug. I'm not going to use this because it's just too difficult to work with. I've gotten brass plugs that have been a complete plug with the top capped off like this. And what I've done is I've screwed them in and then drilled them out and tapped them. But I can't find anybody local that actually has a plug. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to take this bolt here, and I'm gonna grind down the head of this bolt so it fits down in the hole. Now that hole is a tapered hole, so I'm gonna make it so it goes down there and starts to get snug after a couple of threads. Then I'm going to take this brass piece here and I'm gonna screw it down on top of it. So I'm gonna wind up with this. Basically, I'll have this. Like I said, the head of this is gonna be ground down. So this way, this will thread in and it'll wedge this down in place and it'll lock it down in place. So then this way, I could just take the knock sensor, this design, and mount it to the top like such and then put a nut on it. This way it'll be sitting down in place. Now, yes, it's not going to be bottomed out on the block itself, but this will be absolutely fine. I've done this in the past and I've had absolutely no issues. It's worked perfectly. So let me go and let me start doing that so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Like I said, I'm going to grind this down so it's just a hair smaller than the threaded area there so it fits down in that hole. Like I said, the hole is tapered, so this thing will wedge down there and it'll get locked in once I tighten the brass part down. Let's see. Yeah, like I said, before I've gotten the ones where I've gotten the brass plug where it's flat, and I just drilled it and tapped it, and then tighten the bolt down onto it, and it's worked perfectly. But since nobody has one, this is what I have to do. This is the next step. So let me get this done. And like I said, the reason I'm using the steel one is just too difficult to tap. And also, I don't have a flat bottom tap. I just have tapered taps. So that's another issue there. So I don't have it for this size at least because I broke mine and I just never replaced it. So let's go ahead. Let's get this ground down and get this thing fitted. All right, so there we go. That's what I wanted to show you. That's what I wanted to do. So now this will fit down in the hole. I actually made it a little smaller than I should have because it bottoms all the way out. But not a big deal because once it's all together, like such, and I get this down in a hole, I could tighten up the brass piece, make that nice and tight, and then when I put the knock sensor on top of it, if I have to, I can hold the tip of this with a pair of vice grips if I can't get it to tighten down on its own. But now I'm just going to tighten this up here and slide the knock sensor down, and we should be good to go. So we're going to bring this all the way down. There we go. It's actually bottomed out. So now, just lay the knock sensor over top. I'm going to thread a nut on there, just like such. And I want to make sure that this is in the right position. It's got to be facing up like that to get to the harness. So now, let me tighten this all up, and then I'll show you the finished product. All right, so that's it. It's on, it's tight, it's cinched down on its own. I didn't have to hold the tip of that on there. So, I mean, that's perfect. That'll work exactly the way I want it to. I have seen where people have taken knock sensors, plugged them in so you don't set a code, and just hang them off to the side. You don't want to do that. The knock sensor controls timing, or basically sends a signal so the computer controls timing. Without it, you could be detonating and you could blow a head gasket. If you got cast pistons or hyper-eutectic pistons, you can crack them. You could pit pistons. You could do all sorts of damage to your motor. You don't want to do that. You don't want to tape that off to the side, tie wrap it off to the side, anything like that. You want to have it mounted to the block like it's supposed to be, unless for some reason you have like a custom tune and you can do away with it. But yes, anyway, that's it. Oh, the other thing too is the coolant temp sensor. They're different, so I had to switch them over. This is the one from the truck. The only other differences are the motor mounts are actually, the bolts in this block are SAE, standard thread, whereas the bolts in that motor in the block are metric. Now, I don't recall, I'll figure it out once I get it on the hoist. The bell housing bolts may also be SAE. I don't recall. It doesn't matter. I have enough hardware from both vehicles to make it work. But other than that, the engines are identical. Everything should be fine. We've done this swap before, and there's no issue. It's just a couple little oddities like that. And not all the bolt holes are SAE versus metric. It's like the weirdest thing. I don't know why GM did that. It was just a strange thing GM did for a period of time. But yeah, so this thing is actually ready. Like I said, I got the manifold swapped over. I always do that too. I don't care. I always take the manifolds from the vehicle that's getting the motor. I take the manifolds from that vehicle, unless the part numbers are identical. I take those manifolds and put them back into that vehicle, because I've run into that where you have a slight difference in a manifold and it'll drive you nuts. But yeah, everything looks pretty good. So I'm ready to pick this thing up on the hoist and actually drop it in place. But yeah, so that's it. So hopefully you got something out of that. If you did, hit that like button. If you could, please subscribe. All right, guys, have a great day. Keep wrenching.